Hey, how's it going, everybody? Before I get started here, this is basically a 1400 series Califone record player. It does have like a model number on it. It's probably going to be hard for you guys to read unless you're on a big screen or something. A lot of it's this camera, anyways. This one is stamped 1430C. After looking it up, that's more like a product series. I found plenty of 1430C Califone record players, but some of them are different than others, mainly on how many dials, how many things you can hook up, and whatnot. This is one of the more limited ones, so I'm cool with that because fewer things that can break. Otherwise, it was mostly more dials for your volume and your tone and your bass and treble, where they'd either separate it out, or on this one, have the tone, bass, and treble all in one dial and whatnot, or hooking up speakers or headphones or whatever. Otherwise, obviously using a different camera here other than the one that's built into my iMac, so I can not only show this playing a record, but I also want to show you guys what I had to do to get it up and running. Not only was it a fairly simple repair slash modification, hence replacing an old part with a different part that happened to work, it only cost me 30 cents at True Value Hardware. So cheap repair to get it up and running. And for a record player from the 60s, that's just, I believe it's a 6x9 oval paper speaker. It sounds pretty damn good. Now, first question is mine. You can hook up an external speaker to it. It's just got one jack for that. Now, for anybody that owns one of these, does that make it stereo, or does that just add to the speaker that's already in it? Hence, keep it mono sound, but just expand it. It'd be nice to know if it turns to stereo. If I find an old speaker, hence it only puts out 10 watt, 8 ohm, I'll have to rig myself up a cord, as it's got the old style guitar type jack that you'd plug into an electric guitar. Otherwise, cool enough, man. For what it is, it plays beautifully and nice and loud. I don't know how it's going to sound through the microphone here, as this microphone can be really weird on my Microsoft Cam. But to me, naked ear, it sounds really good just turned up halfway. So, right off the bat, cosmetically, I didn't have to do much. Just had one spot, which, yeah, it's facing away from me. It's this side. We're on the corner here. The vinyl had just kind of split apart. Anyways, I just used some super glue gel and got that all fixed. And that was the only repair I had to do on the vinyl, or whatever they use here, which, yeah, let's call it vinyl. It definitely looks like some kind of vinyl that they cover it with. Otherwise, the only other thing I did cosmetically to it was repaint the dials. So the dials on this, they look nice now. As the white paint was all pretty much faded off, which easy enough to do with just some masking tape and white spray paint. And they turned out good. Otherwise, all the metal, nothing's been beat up. I mean, whoever had this took care of it. So, that'll open up the lid here. Which, as you can see, 3 dials, which are freshly painted now. It's the white rings on top. Anyways, as you can see, only 3 dials, and then that's where you can plug in an external 10-watt speaker. Now, on the instructions inside the lid, obviously it's showing a little bit more, which that one, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, it's like 5 dials, external speaker jack, and microphone jack. And I think that's it. Or what is it, 9? Okay, they're showing something that I can't, I don't know what it is, what they're trying to point out there on the symbol in front of the record, but it just says variable speed control. And that says it's on 1435C and 1455C only. as you can see in the lid there, if you guys can read it okay, it says 1400C series. So even though it says 1430C, it's still more of a series. I found plenty of different variations of this where it was either more or less dials or more of these jacks where you can plug in stuff, or the wording would be different here. So just depends on what you find. And on getting a estimated date on this, I found one on SD that somebody had sold. I don't know for how much, but they were just saying 1960s. So anyways, I want to pop on a record here, so hopefully it'll sound fairly good to you guys, or good enough just to give a demo. I'll put on one of the records out of my heavy metal movie soundtrack, and then I will show you guys an easy way to remove that, hence the little clamp. And hopefully I'm close enough to show you the part or give you an idea. It was pretty simplistic. There's not much to this one. On opening this up, as in taking out the metal part here, you just take out all the screws around the side, and then it just lifts out like this. And you do have some wires to watch out for, but I was able to lift it up out of there enough to look everything over good. Kind of just twist this to the side just to check for dust or loose wires that need to be resoldered or whatever. And the inside, it just needed a little bit of canned air, and it cleaned up good. So whoever had it took care of it. Otherwise, pretty damn simplistic. Thing that is weird, as somebody else brought up in one of their videos where they're just demoing this thing, the way they did the speaker, I've never seen that before. It's not flush to the side here. It's at an angle, about that much. Just kind of the top is leaning back. And they got the top fastened to where it's fairly solid with a couple of like metal leaves on a bracket. And then the bottom, there's two springs. So the bottom could have a little bit of wobble, but not just outright vibration, as they're fairly good sized springs. So I think it has to do with adding more bass or something. But it works, man. I really don't get any vibration or anything off of it. It sounds fairly good. And being that it's a 6x9 speaker, as long as you can find one the same wattage, or you might end up finding one that's a little bit over 10 watt. I think as long as it's 8 ohm, you're okay. You don't want to get too high a wattage, or it won't be able to put out enough power to pump the speaker. But they matched it up pretty damn good. I literally just cleaned this off, and it's like the dust family of the dust comes back from vacation. I love Arizona, man. You can't keep anything clean here. It's like there's dust on the dust. On the speeds for this one, it is 4-speed. And on what I fixed, it's one of those things when the turntable's on how it hits this wheel that I had to fix, it puts some pressure on it, which makes all this spin part of it work better. But when the turntable's off and that pressure is not being against it, some of the speeds, like at the lowest, which is 16, I got to put my finger against it to get the wheel spinning. So it could be it's just off by a little bit on what I did, but otherwise, all I've been able to test so far is just a standard 33, which is pretty much what you're going to find nowadays. Anything else, I got to find some records that are worth buying, let alone playing, which I keep hitting up GoodWill, and people just don't take care of stuff around here, man. And GoodWill doesn't check stuff. They'll get records in, and they're just absolutely trashed, and they still want like $2-3 for it, for a record that's all scratched up. This one, for anybody that's been watching, this is right now number 4 of my collection, heavy metal soundtrack. Anyways, this one I picked up from a local retro store where she does check some of the records, and it's in good shape. So should sound good here. It's got it on 33. Does have play, pause, and off, and it's not showing up good. There is a little light on top right there, which fortunately isn't burned out, and it is nice and bright. So if you're in a dark room, you can see your spot on the record. Put it on pause. As you can see, it lights it up. Turn this down to about just a quarter volume, and then I'll gradually turn it up. I'm going to start out with just all bass. Like I said, I don't know how it's going to sound through this mic. And I think it has the original needle. So anyways, that's with just the bass. I'll get some tone in there. Turn it up about halfway here. And this is with it all the way over to treble. And like I said, I don't know how it's going to sound to you guys, but I was turning it a little bit past halfway up. Saying halfway up to me sounds just right in this room. It does put out the sound, but it will let me crank it pretty good without it sounding too distorted. Which, if you guys find one of these, they're old, man. Consider it old, so don't just keep it cranked up, or you're definitely going to fry the damn speaker. So you don't want to put too much power through it. It's just an old paper speaker, but easy enough to take out and replace with something. In fact, I don't even think I was kind of feeling around and it didn't feel like the wires were soldered to it. It felt like they were on the little clamps. Being at the angle it's in, I couldn't get in there good enough to look without having to disconnect stuff. But yeah, it felt like they're just on the little clamps, so you can just pull them off, pop them on a new one. Otherwise, another thing, which I kind of doubt, like I said, well, I don't know. It might bypass it. It just depends on how they have it on plugging in an external speaker. I'll have to modify something and see what I can do on that. Otherwise, not bad. The only other record player that I was able to get up and running good was my Sony front loader, which after I messed around with it a whole bunch, taking the top half off and not seeing the part that was having problems, I decided to take off the bottom metal plate, and boom, there it is. Little motor, the little belt, which is pretty damn small, like big enough to go around your thumb, was overstretched, so it was skipping a bit on making the stylus arm go back and forth or whatever to play the record. So all I used on that was a rubber band. Boom, it plays beautifully now. It's just, it wants to have a nice stereo system with a nice loud amp and whatnot. I pretty much just got it going through my 70s boom box, and I got it cranked, and it's still not as loud as I'd like it. So nice to have something to where I can just have it as is and test out records. So put this away. One thing that's nice, it tells me not too many people, or at least no kids, looked at this. Still has the little adapter there for playing 45s, which that's what I've been looking for lately, is I haven't tested it with a 45. So, went to Goodwill today. They had one, and it was trashed. So I may have to find one at the same place I got my heavy metal album from. Otherwise, very surprised that this didn't get lost to Goodwill, and it just sits in there. And then when you want to play a 45, you give it a twist, and that raises it up. Otherwise, you can keep it on there. And if worst comes to worst, try and find an old 45 that has that adapter, as you can still use that. So anyways, yeah, you guys can't even see it, so I'll just have to explain it. The post has one of those kind of C-clamp type things that it's got a groove around it, and then you push on it, and it kind of expands out and then clamps around it to hold the thing on. Anyways, found an old casino dice works really good for taking that off instead of trying to do it with a screwdriver. Push on it just enough with this. Get it started. And then it just pops right off. On the other piece, if you guys do have to take it off, yeah, little bitty screwdriver, and be really careful. I'll try and point out what I'm talking about, because not only is this little clamp here, which I'll show you guys, it's like a little round horseshoe type thing. Anyways, the other one's smaller, so it can go flying south, and you got to use a screwdriver to gradually wedge it off and hopefully not flick it across the room. But there's also some really small white washers where one is on top of the piece, and then I think there's 2 or 3 below it. And I noticed because of just oil and stuff, when I lifted off the part, those washers would stick. So if you don't see any washers, look on the bottom and make sure they're not all grouped up and stuck to the bottom of it before you set it down, or they could fall on your carpet or whatever, as they are needed. Otherwise, as you remove the clamp, just lifts right off. On the speeds here, 1633 0 setting, which just releases the mechanism from the motor and the turntable, so it can just spin in place for transport and whatnot, or if you're not using it. It's right there. That right there is what I'm talking about. Right now I can pretty much spin it, because it's not really hitting anything. And then 45 and 78. And some of you might know what I'm talking about, some may not, but like if any of you have ever used one of those step-down type drill bits that looks like a Christmas tree, to where it starts out really small. It's for like making a large hole without having to change out bits. So it starts out really small, then gradually gets thicker. Some of them up to the size of a quarter. Anyways, it kind of works like that on the motor on this part, where it starts out really skinny on top for speed 16 and then gradually starts thickening up, where 78 would be the thickest. Otherwise, on taking that off, like I say, same type of little clamp, and then you just got to watch out for those little washers there. And on this part, get it out here. Fortunate for me, it had just started on the rubber part getting hardened up, so it wasn't to the part or to the point where it was gonna just disintegrate. So I was able to put a cut in it and get a screwdriver, just a small one, and gradually scoop it out. That's what it looks like. And See, not real thick, but the way they did this is it kind of sits in there about halfway. So there's a groove cut in this going around. And on the halfway, I'm just taking a guess, is when it dries out like this, you also have shrinkage. Hence, it was not making good contact unless I had the turntable on, where still I could stop it spinning with my pinky finger pretty much on every speed, man. It just was not doing good. So anyways, I say, I'd have to separate it here a little bit. So I just put a cut in it and then just gradually lifted it out of there. But if you're to the point where it's so dried up where you're getting pieces, might be a little bit more work. As I don't know if I just got lucky or what, but when it comes to it being glued in, not much glue. Where there was just a little bit of residue, just in tiny spots around the circumference, which on that, I just got some really, really light grade sandpaper and just, I mean, very lightly. You don't want to just outright sand it, but just very lightly just scuffed off the little glue particles so it was all nice and smooth on the circumference. And then on the O-ring, pretty much just took this to True Value Hardware, got it into their cabinet full of O-rings, and just matched it up with one and happened to luck out. And right off the bat, you don't want to go too crazy, but you do want to have it be just a little bit thicker than this, so it just kind of sets in the groove that's been cut into it and doesn't go completely all the way in to where you lose the O-ring. Anyways, about that size. Pretty close to the same, where you just got to give it a little bit of stretch to get around that. You don't want to go too small, as these are made out of fairly hard rubber, so if you're really giving it a stretch, it can't snap. Not right off the bat sometimes, but just you're putting more tension on it to where it'll just snap eventually. I've had that problem stretching them out too much on other things that I've repaired with them. Otherwise, even that it's rounded, plenty of tension on that now, like you heard when I was playing the record. Anyways, on 78, that you definitely got to have a little bit of that tension from the turntable. It gets this side to make it do just right, but it will spin. Otherwise, I can kind of stop it. Not too easily, but kind of stop it. .45. Nice and smooth and solid. .33, same thing, nice and solid. Yeah, I can stop it, but I gotta press a little bit harder with my thumbnail. Otherwise, when the turntable's on, it works great. 16, different story here. As you can see, it's not spinning. But the way this works, it's on kind of like a spring-loaded swivel arm, where it's got the spring for making it go up and down. As you can see, it raises it up and down for the different speeds, and then it's got another spring under this for putting your tension on it. Which, yeah, you could tighten up the spring, which is a real bitch to do. I don't recommend it. That would be getting the spring and cutting off the old loop and then making a new one, and having it stretch out more. Otherwise, when I've got the turntable on at speed 16, it's just as good as the rest. It puts just enough tension on it to make it go good. And being that I'm new to collecting records, since I didn't really have any record players growing up when I was a kid, it was pretty much my two sisters, or if I went to a friend's house. For me, it was pretty much just starting out with 8 tracks, which was for a very short period, then tape cassettes, and then CDs later on in the 80s. So on records, I'm assuming speed 16, hence the slowest would be for maybe like Victrola type stuff, your really old records. And then 33 more common, 45 for your small ones that got the big hole, and then 78s, I haven't found one yet. From what I've seen on the 78s, I guess they're the same size, just recorded at a different speed, I guess, as a regular old record. Otherwise, cool, man. When you open this up, I mean, this whole mechanism here, unless something breaks on the plastic, like if this thing's taking a fall off a shelf or something, there's really not much to it. I did have to take out the post here for the turntable, which that has a couple of washers. It was 2 different types. Otherwise, it's just on a post sticking out of the plastic there with a hole in it, and then has one of those clamps to the bottom. There's nothing connected to it. So that's the only thing that makes the turntable spin. On other stuff, your power supply is off to one side. It looks like if you could find the right voltage power supply for the inside, easy enough to take out the old one and put in new. Pretty much everything seems really simplistic to get at on this, if you had to replace anything or upgrade it or whatever. Otherwise, creeping slowly into 30 minutes here. I did not want to make this a long video. So, any information you guys can give me for anybody who has one of these, great. Otherwise, man, not bad for 20 bucks. And on the condition, there's the condition, man. That's pretty much the only cosmetic thing I had to do, other than just give it a light wipe down on the vinyl here, or whatever this is, with some Armor All, which got rid of all the grime and everything. It was pretty clean when I got it. And same on the inside. And you can order those. It's just trying to find the exact same type. I only found one site selling them so far when I was looking around, and they were all the older metal ones, and I don't know if they're the same circumference or not. So I don't know if you can put an older one on a newer record player, like one from the 50s or whatever. It would be metal on metal for the post or whatever, so I don't know. Some of them even had metal turntables. So, on to the next video. Well, I'll show you guys more stuff. Speaking of music, right place at the right time. When it comes to stuff for hooking up your guitars to amps, I found something really cool that's brand freaking new for dirt cheap. They didn't know what it was at the thrift store. So, made a really nice score. And I think that thing was from the 70s. It looks like it never got used. So, I'll be showing that in the next vid. Have a good one, everybody.